Hey y'all, I'm back again today because I said I would and I'm a woman of my word. It's cold outside here in Louisiana, or cold to us. It's probably would be a warm day in some areas, but it's cold and wet and nasty. But so I came in just to do this because I said I would, and I want to be good for my word. So let me show you. This is video 3 in the series of what I think is going to be 4 of working with DIY paint on the glass ornaments and having some IOD molds on here. I haven't even looked at these yet, so I'll be doing this with you at you see it the same time I see it. So, but I did pick this up, and this is what I thought was really odd. This is the one with the Dixie Belle copper with the liquid patina on it, and if you look at this side of it, that's where the decorative mold's at. It's completely dry and looking all decorative, but the underside that I had like leaning on the cup like this, where it didn't have as much air circulation, is still wet. So you don't think about how much air circulation that something may need to dry. And I say that because other than the top half of this was dried to look beautiful, the under half, obviously you can see where it was sitting on the cup, that's still wet. I'm going to try to dry it here in a minute, but this is the same exact, turn it around here, the same exact product, and this one, I bet this is still not dry inside the ornament. See the difference in how they look? That's the same amount of stuff and the same thing done to both of them. I love both of them, but I'm gonna see if I can blow dry the bottom of this, just so we'll see what's gonna happen there. I was thinking it would be changing before our eyes, but it's not. So what I'm going to do is just put it design side down and let it air dry, and we will look at this one again Thursday. But let me show you this part that I was a little bit worried about. The IOD mold on this one, this is the one that kind of broke and fell apart and stuff like that, and I just stuck it on here best I could on the ornament. Let's see if it can get a good configuration of a picture of that. But so I just jabbed it on there best I could and painted around it, and it looks like it did well. And but there's areas where the copper's still showing in the... Hey, thank you. I didn't get any glass paint. Lisa Ann, I didn't get to stop at Walmart, and I live in an area, we're over an hour away from the nearest like Hobby Lobby or Michael's or anything. There's no craft store here. I live in a rural area, so all we have is Walmart or Amazon. And I did look on Amazon, and they had a few, but they didn't have the Martha Stewart one that you talked about. Thank you. Let me hold it back up. They didn't have the Martha Stewart one that you told me about, and I haven't been to Walmart yet, but I went to the Plaid site, which is another brand of like the craft paint, to see, you know, if it was carried at, you know, at any of the local stores or anything like that, and it didn't say. But I am still on that, and I plan on stopping by there on my way home today. But this ended up looking pretty cool. But like I said, that part that was sitting on the cup didn't dry, so that may not be a good way to dry them, and we learned from that. And here's the green one. It's you can see a couple little areas maybe where I didn't get the paint good, but the IOD mold did attach itself. Hi. The IOD mold did attach itself for the most part, so that looks good. We're going to put a second coat of paint on that one today, and it was dry on bottom. It didn't do the same thing. And here's the teal one that we did, and if you look underneath there a little bit, you can see where I guess it dried and pulled a little, so the paint's not under there as much as it was. So, but with the second coat, we'll cover that. So I'm still glad. Okay, that would be awesome, Lisa. And if y'all see the live up top, we're still live in the little red box. If not, you're catching us on the replay, so I don't always see the comments as they go on that. And if you can give me a heart or a share. That would be awesome to help the business as well. And also, if you are interested in any of the products that I'm using, like the DIY or the Dixie Belle or anything like that, just let me know and I'll drop links in there. I do have affiliate links for that. But we're gonna put a second coat on here and decorate that. So that one dried well. And I still see a damp spot here on the very bottom of this one. You may or may not be able to see it in there. It's right there. But here's how this did stick and dry well on the other side. And I'm not gonna well, there's a little bit there of a gap, but that'll fill up with this clay-based paint. So let me see what I can get started with. I'm gonna do the green one first, and I'm gonna do the liquid patina from DIY on here first, which will need to dry, and I'm gonna try to dry it with the hair dryer, and then I'm gonna put the liquid patina over that, which will give it that aged look a little bit. So I'm just using one of those tiny chip brushes that are left over from our make and take, and I can still paint over this. It's not like a wax, this liquid patina, so if I decide I need another coat of the green in a minute, I will. But because I'm going to be putting a coat of the darker liquid patina on here, and then I got out a little cup of that I had of a, you can barely see it, of a mint chip that I'm going to highlight with afterward. I'm thinking it may not need another coat everywhere else, because you do want it to look rough and textured a little bit. That's the purpose of using the clay-based paints. And this is a really good project to start a little bit early, because there's a curing time to make sure that, you know, they're not going to scratch later on and be completely cured and be you know, able to be enjoyed for years to come. And that's about 30 days on these kind of paints. So I hope that you can trying to get all the edges here, and I have never ever tried to dry this stuff with a hair dryer, so that's gonna be new. I've used it many times, but I always just, you know, let it sit to dry. It doesn't take that long to dry, an hour or so, you know, as far as to the touch, to where you could put another coat if you need to, but we don't have an hour, right? And even though it goes on here white, it's going to be clear. And so you can see the stripes of it on back. I gotta tell on myself what I did yesterday. You know, I put these on there yesterday, and then I put a little paint on there, and then I was blow drying it like this, but I had already got off with the live, but I wanted to dry them a little bit and see how it was going to look, to try to think of what I was going to do whenever I got here today. And I blew this thing right off the top of it, landed on my floor. There's a big flower shape right on my floor now. and this is my workroom. So Louisiana, the clay-based paints are fabulous. They're DIY by Debbie's Design Diary, and I have an affiliate link so that I get credit for it if you go through that link to look, and I'll put it down underneath here in a minute. This is not all the way dry, but it's the most part dry, but that's dry enough for, I think, for me to be able to show y'all the next part that I want to show you. I know nobody has all day long to get the idea of the craft. Now this is the same by the same company, but this one's called Dark and Decrepit. It's also a liquid patina. This one was, you know, like a clear top coat, and what that does is seal the clay-based paint in there. It has no sealer like the acrylic paints and stuff like that do, so it always is going to have to be sealed with either wax or a poly top of a top coat or the liquid patina or something like that. But this dark one, and the reason I put this on first, sorry about that, the reason I put this on first is is that clay absorbs things. It absorbs anything that you put on there, and it's reactivated by water. If I was to have just put water back on there, I could have wiped the whole dang thing off, because it has sort of no sticking power once it's wet, and you need to let it dry and then go toward curing. But if I had put this dark on here without putting the clear on first, this paint would have sucked it up, and I would have had a whole lot less control over where it went and how much of it absorbed. I still don't have full control over that, but it's much better to have had the clear coat under there first. So the Dark and Decrepit is going to just sort of go in there and help those details that are in the mold to show up better. And we can use as much or as little of that here, and we can thin it out with the clear if we wanted to take some of it back off. I want to make sure that y'all can see that part. I want you to still be able to see the green through there, but I want it to be sort of dark and decrepit. There's a little bit of a learning curve with these paints, but once you get it, there's nothing else like it. There is absolutely nothing else like working with these. See how that looks? For goodness sakes, I keep getting so many messages. Just sort of old and rattled there, but I have more on the front, so it's going to look older there. I'm going to try to take a little bit of that back off around the edges. Make sure it goes all the way up to my little lid thing there. Blending it in. I'm going to dry on this just a tad, just on top of the design, because I wanted to show you what I was going to do with the that little bit of lighter paint. And that dries hot. Thank you. Now once you use a wax on, and we didn't, but if I were to have used a wax on here, once you use a wax on there, that's your last thing. And I wouldn't have been able to put the Dark and Decrepit on top of the wax. I could have used a dark wax to went in the crevices in the same area, but I wouldn't have been able to paint over that and had that stick. Wax is like your very last thing, and when you put it on, you know, nothing else is going to really stick to it. This is my bag of El Cheapo brushes that I use. That way, if I ruin it with any of this stuff, it's not a big deal. Okay, I'm just dipping in a little. This is the DIY paint in Mint Chip. And if this don't look good, then you paint over it. That paint is very forgiving, but I'm just going to want to put just a tad here and there. That's too much paint over the top areas. Let me see. If I can do that, I'll just go ahead and put it on and then take some back off. got too much on there. See how it made the details of that come back off. And then I'm using this, it's apparently dried up on there. Where'd I put my dark and decrepit? Just gonna dip the tip of my brush in that to try to go back over it just a tad. There, I like it. Now if I put a ribbon that semi-matches that, and you could go lighter, darker, and continue to do anything you want to on there, but the IOD molds really make it, in my opinion. And the clay-based paint, you know, as it dries, even though it has a finish over it, it's still going to look, you know, thick and textured like this one does. Let's see if I can set that one aside. Not seeing too well today. I had eye surgery. If any of you are ever thinking about that, think long and hard, because it has been difficult. Okay, on this one we really need another coat of the DIY Old 57, because the mold shrunk a little bit and left some of the glass exposed, and then where it dried it cracked a little bit. But see how cool that looks? This doesn't look anything like a flat glass ornament anymore. And if you wanted it to be more smooth, I'm wanting mine to be pretty textured. And see, this paint is pretty thick, and I'm kind of wanting those lines and that textures to show on there to make it look more old and old world kind of looking. But if you wanted less lines to show and all that, you would just use a misting bottle. I thought I had one over here, I don't see one, but a water misting bottle, and or dip your brush just a little bit more in water to thin out those lines, or you can lightly sand afterward and get any of those lines off. But I want those lines on there because I want the texture on my piece. It's looking really cracked and rough in some areas, so that's ideal. Makes it look like an old piece of pottery. I'm going to let this one, where my thumb was at, pull some off. I'm going to touch that up. Stab some on there, and I'm going to let this sit and dry on its own while we work on the white one for the rest of the way. And this one, I think this is supposed to look more like a sunflower or something, but I'm going to use red and green on it and a little bit of gold and pretend it's for Christmas. And I'm going to go ahead and do the details of the floral part here while y'all are watching, and then I'll come around and put another coat of the white on there to thicken it up, dry it a little bit, and put the clear liquid patina over it. But let's see. This is Carnival Red by DIY. This could look purely silly, but you never know until you try, and that's the thing that I'm hoping that y'all get out of this, is just be fearless. Just try something new, because it never hurts. It always helps you learn. Can you see that? All of the word, there you go. All the words are in my way there. And you're not, if you do try this, I am not at all trying to be perfect with my placement, because the texture and the old look of these in the long run is supposed to be that of something that's time worn and old and like newly found. It's not supposed to look like something that was found or come off, you know, new, or comes off an assembly line or anything like that. So you're not looking for perfectly placed red paint or any of those things. You're looking for things that look old and handmade. Takes a lot of the pressure off when you stop trying to want to make things look just right. It takes a tremendous amount of pressure off. I used to always want everything to look just so, you know, and if it was up to my husband, I would just paint landscapes of flowers all the time that look like photographs, but that's not who I am. I'm way more likely to paint a picture of a chicken riding a bicycle and enjoy it, enjoy the process. You know, this would have looked just as good to have done it in a bronze or something like that and not worried about it being in Christmas colors. I just happened to have red on my mind and be wanting to try to see if I could make it at first glance look like it was intended to be a Christmas flower. So there's the red. Just blobbed on there. I'm going to do the same with Fancy Farm Girl, which is another green right in the middle, over the areas that look like they would be leaves. I'm going to put some green here in the middle, even though I'm not wanting my middle to be green. I'm going to have it as my sort of base tone. And as this red is drying, it's actually drying in places already pretty quickly. I'm going to, any space in the red that I see a dot of white coming through, I'm going to dot it with this green, not red. Because with flowers, there's always areas where you can see a little bit of a leaf poking through here and there, and that, you know, relieves some of the pressure and shows a little more of the texture of the piece. There's a little white right there. That adds a little bit of depth to it, which is always good. It's almost looking like it's supposed to be that way. In the patinas, there's also the golden ticket. That's one of the ones we used to fill these gold balls. I'm going to use a little bit of that over the green. And this works as a patina, just like the clear patina we used earlier works as a, what do you call it, like a top coat, like a poly. So it's going to protect these areas of the, and I'm just sort of daubing that in there, here and there. I picked up some of the red, it muddied it up a little bit, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is go around the edges here of this, just a little bit, to sort of outline it, just because sometimes that makes things stand out a little more. You know, like, I never was the kid, but in school there was usually a kid who could color better than everybody else, and they always seemed to have their pictures outlined in the most beautiful, darker aspects of the crayon to make it all stand out and look beautiful. The people who just had the instinct to know what looked good and made theirs stand out from everybody else's. I always wanted to be that kid. And so I would watch and look at all the pretty things that they were doing, and I would learn from them and make them my own in the best way that I knew how. Now I've got that outlined, and I'm going to just touch here and there in the grooves of what would be the flower, just as a little extra something something in the details. Okay, so now that needs to dry. I'll put more white around the edges, and then I'll put the liquid patina over it, and I'll show y'all that next time we come on. But I think the last one we're going to do today, where's the first one? The first one was that one that's still drying with the copper and the patina on it. And don't exactly know what to do here. This one's still a little bit damp. I'm going to blow dry it just for a second. I'm going to go ahead and paint some liquid patina on it because I'm really afraid of messing it up if I don't protect it. Trying to thin it out a little bit in these grooves, but I want to make sure that it does get there. So whatever we decide to do with that, in just a minute it can get in there good. Making sure to get in these seams real good so that can be sealed off. This is looking very textured now. I'm trying to get it up by the camera where you can see a little bit, very textured, and that's ideal. And it's not completely dry, or what I would like to do at this point would be use some dark wax on it, but if I go trying to rub wax on there when the paint's still wet a little bit, it's going to rub off some of the paint. So let me see what I can do. Excuse me one moment. I don't know what to do. I want to make it look aged. I can use some of this darker blue to do that with and kind of dry brush it on there. This is boho blue. Let's try that. And when you're dry brushing, you're obviously not wetting your brush. You're getting only a small amount on there and then taking some of that back off. I don't want it to look like a straight line around there, but I want it to look like dirt and debris and years of age have happened in there. Make sure y'all can see it. So you look for areas on the piece that would have where the dust would have settled. You know, areas that would have been a pain in the patootie to clean. And even though this may have been cleaned for many years, nobody probably went up to it with a butter knife on a paper towel or something trying to scrape in between there to make sure these ledges and areas that were deep down in there, all the cleaning they did probably pushed it even deeper in there. That's the idea I get for it anyway. Make it a little bit wider than it is there. And that probably would have happened a little bit up here by this neck. My brush is still dry, but there's still a little bit on it, and I don't want it as thick and as much on there as there was on that. Okay, and then in between these bubbles that are part of the decor, that would be darker. This is so much fun. I'm so glad y'all are on here with me. When your friends can't craft with you, there's always me. And I'm glad you are here. I would love to invite my BFFK over to craft with me today, but because it's so nasty outside, I love her enough to not ask her to drive out in the rain and the nasty to come hang with me today. And I haven't dipped in my paint in quite a while. I'm just trying to rub every last bit of it off on there. So there you go on that. And I'm going to do something different than I had planned. So let me grab one more thing. I hope it's in here. Let's see what color we can find. Turquoise teal, that's not what I want. These are called gilding waxes, and there's hammered copper, sterling silver, or turquoise teal, and there may be more. That's just all I had in my basket right there. The silver would look good on here, and you know, the copper with this patina, that may tie these in together. Whenever I first started on these ornaments, I was thinking, you know, I have in my mind how I'm going to display them to sell and stuff like that, but I'm thinking when I want things in threes. So whenever I do something, like I'm gonna need to make not 3 identical to this, but 3 green ones, 3 teal ones, 3 patinaed ones. But that sterling silver would look good on there too. It may, at this point, depend on which one I can get open. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of whispering today. We have a spa in the back of our building as well, and somebody's back there getting a massage right now, and I don't want to interrupt it with my jaw jacking. So I like to do this with my finger. I think some people do it with a brush, but this is how I always do it. And just over the top of the details. And it will be as if this whole band was copper to begin with, but because of rain and decay and many years of seeing the outside life, parts of it have developed a patina. I'm going to put a little bit up here on what I would consider to be the shoulders of this, because maybe the water would have ran off of these areas enough to where you could still see a little bit of the copper there. And barely just enough to kind of dirty it up around the rest of it. Okay. Nobody's gonna have it like all up in their face, then you can see, but you can see the details there. I have my ring light behind it, and it actually looks old in person, so it'll look cute once the hanger's back on it and the bow and all that, and I'll get to that next week. Or tomorrow, depending on how dry everything is. But I think this is dry enough now, so I'm gonna, if you want to stay with me, I'm gonna put a finish out. I don't know whether to finish it out with the coat of white again. I think that's what I'm gonna do, and then we'll put the liquid patina over it. And this is just to, you could cover up any mistakes you made, like I just had a little bit of red on there with your second coat of the white. But what I'm doing at this point is making it look rough and textured, making sure that all areas have some over it, and that it's thick on here so it'll look like a piece of pottery. But it's already dry. The red and green that we just did, that's already dry. And I'm not dipping my brush in water at all the way I would if I was painting on a canvas or a piece of furniture or anything like that. This is the paint that I use to paint furniture with. But I painted a hat with it a few days ago. And it painted so well, I'm like, man, I'm gonna try that instead of my acrylics on those ornaments too. Okay, so now it's just more thick and textured on there. Let's try that real quick. To say this now, I don't like the way this looks. I don't like the traditional red and green on it, so I'm going to go ahead and cover it in the liquid patina, but I'm probably going to go over this with maybe this sterling silver or something like that to cover the majority of this red and green up, and see if that doesn't give it a better look. And if it doesn't, I'll paint over the whole dang thing tomorrow. And I will lose zero sleep over it. Because nobody knows what it's supposed to look like but us, right? And how many things turn out how I intended on them to turn out. The best ones never do. Everything always comes out better than you intended if you just go with the flow, in my opinion. Let the creative spirit guide you to do whatever just your hands do. So I just went over the whole thing with that liquid patina. And that's to protect the paint from coming off. That's the reason that I did that, or I'd have left it alone. I just thought of another idea. Let me see if I can get the comments back. I just thought of another idea while I was working on this. So I would love to get your opinions on that. I can leave it this traditional red and green. I could draw some gold leaves on there or something. Or I could use the sterling silver gilding wax and cover most of the red and green so that it's not so traditional Christmas. Or this was the idea I came up with while I was blow drying. What if I went around it to make the white part look like a buffalo check? You think that would be a good idea? That would be cool. I can always paint over it tomorrow if it doesn't look good, right? What do you think? Leave it red and green, make it silver, or put dark and decrepit over it first? I could do that too. Or put a buffalo check around it just for something different. What do y'all think? I don't know what I did with the lid to that light. Okay, I don't see any comments, so I'm going with buffalo check. And this could be good or bad. If you're scared, say you're scared. I ain't scared. I ain't ever scared. This is Little Black Dress. And I'm going to mix it in this. I'm going to put a little more white in here. I had white in there. And make a gray. This is White Swan. I just put too much of it. Just a very tad. That's too much. Somewhere around here I had a bunch of gray, and I could have just used a gray for this, but I just mixed the White Swan and the little black dress and made my own. Another one of those, use what you got. You ain't got to get up and go find nothing. Okay, sure hope this works. Because if not, I'd be awfully silly, right? Wish I had something besides my finger to stick it on. I'm just going the width of my brush, and I just picked a brush. This is probably a 1/2 inch. Going about the width of my brush apart, and I'm not worried about little areas where it doesn't all go in good. That light is killing me. Sorry about that. I had a phone call. I do like it better already. Always trust your gut. Because you are not likely to not tell yourself the truth just to keep from hurting your feelings. Okay, so we have gray stripes all the way around it that way. Now we're going to do them this way. The little bit of ridges that I have going through here, which are actually the brush strokes, are making it look a little more textured, which is ideal. Reminds me of a flannel shirt. It's almost flannel shirt weather here. Okay, so now there's that. We're going to dip in the black. I'm going to wet my brush just a tad. I'm hoping I don't overdo that. Dry it back off a little. This black paint is very thick. And I'm just going to choose every other square. Fill her in. I can't remember if it goes beside each other or I think it does. Okay. Hey Candy, sorry I couldn't answer your phone call. So there it went from being white to being my version of buffalo plaid. I like it much better, and once it gets and we could still, you know what, we could still put a tad of the sterling silver wax on top. Try to tone down some of that gold that was on there already. I don't know if we can tell about it or not. But that does tone it down. There we go. Okay, there you go. Looks way different than I anticipated. I appreciate y'all watching. I think they turned out cute. And I have enjoyed it. If there's another color, another style, another anything you'd like to see, let me know. I just got in the replacement ones today for the ones that came in broken last week. They must have changed boxes too, because look, same thing from Dairies, but they have a different box now. But anyways, those replaced, instead of the red boxes, the replacements are here, and we'll be doing something to those and something to these gold ones and all of that this coming week. And I appreciate you watching. Thanks. Bye. And putting the bows on. We're gonna put the bows on, decorate the little tops, and do the finishing touches on them. Thanks. Bye.